At 13, sold to a millionaire, she rewrites destiny 7 years later in glory. Welcome to an unforgettable tale of courage and triumph on Stories to H. Meet Emma, a 13-year-old girl sold into a nightmare, only to rise against all odds. Her journey will grip your heart. Don't miss a second. Like and subscribe to Stories TH for more inspiring stories like this one. Imagine a quiet evening in a small American town, the kind where folks still wave from their porches and kids ride bikes down streets lined with oak trees. Inside a modest home, 13-year-old Emma stands frozen, her world crumbling as shouts echo through the thin walls. Her father, Robert, a man she's trusted all her life, a guy who once taught her how to bait a fishing hook down by the creek, now stands in the doorway, his face pale and sweaty, his voice cracking with desperation. "Emma, get back here now," he yells, and she runs to him, her sneakers slapping the worn wooden steps. Not because she wants to, but because she's scared of what's happening. Inside, the air feels thick, heavy with something awful she can't name yet. Her mom, Lucy, frail and trembling, sits crumpled on the floor, clutching her chest like she's fighting for every breath, tears streaming down her face. Then there's this stranger, a middle-aged man in a dark suit, a jagged scar slicing down his cheek, his eyes cold as a winter wind off Lake Michigan. He's staring at Emma like she's a piece of meat at the butcher's shop, and when he speaks, his voice rumbles with menace. "This the girl?" Robert nods fast, too fast, stammering. Yes, she's Emma, and the man's gaze sharpens, pinning her in place. She steps back, her heart thudding like a jackrabbit's, instinct screaming danger. "Dad, what's going on?" she asks, her voice shaking, but Robert won't meet her eyes. Lucy sobs harder, grabbing at his sleeve, pleading, "Please don't do this, she's only 13. But the man cuts her off, sharp as a knife. "A debt's a debt. If you can't pay the money, you hand over something of equal value." And then it hits Emma like a punch to the gut. Her dad's not just broke, he's selling her. Selling her to erase some mess he's tangled up in. A debt he can't cover with the paycheck from his mechanic job or the savings they never had. He finally forces the words out, each one a nail in her trust. "I'm going to marry you off to Alexander Mitchell." Time stops. Alexander Mitchell, a name she's never heard. Some rich guy who's promised to wipe Robert's slate clean if he gets Emma as his wife. She's 13, still a kid who dreams of 8th grade dances and summer camp, not wedding vows. No way," she screams, shaking her head, backing toward the door, but it's no use. 2 goons appear, blocking her escape, one sneering, "Where you going, little girl?" as he grabs her wrist so tight she feels the bones grind. She fights, kicking and clawing, yelling for her mom, but they tie her up like she's livestock, dragging her to a sleek black car. Through the window, she sees Lucy collapse on the ground, wailing into the night, and Robert just stands there, head down, letting it happen. That's the betrayal that cuts deepest, not the ropes or the threats, but her own father trading her away like she's nothing more than a bargaining chip. In America, we grow up hearing family's everything, the rock you lean on when the storms hit. For Emma, that rock shattered, leaving her alone in a nightmare she never saw coming. Whisked off to the Mitchell mansion, a sprawling estate that could swallow her little household, she's thrust into a world of cold luxury, where Caroline, Alexander's stepmother, rules with an iron fist and a voice that could freeze a Texas summer. "You've been sold," Caroline spits, and those words sink into Emma like a blade, carving out any hope of home. Alexander, her so-called husband, looms tall and silent, his dark eyes offering no comfort, just a shrug of indifference. "Behave, or you'll regret it." She's a prisoner now, forced to scrub floors and kneel in the yard under a blazing sun, her small hands cracked and bleeding, her dreams of freedom fading with every slap from the housekeeper, Diana. But it all started with that moment of desperation. Robert, a man who'd once bandaged her skinned knees, choosing his own skin over his daughter's life. You can almost picture him hunched in that doorway, a guy who'd fallen behind on bills, maybe gambled too much at the local bar or borrowed from the wrong crowd. In small-town America, We know those stories, folks, stretched thin, making bad calls when the bank account's dry. But to sell your own kid? That's a line most wouldn't cross, a betrayal that echoes beyond the dollars and cents. For Emma, it's not just the loss of her freedom. It's the gut-wrenching realization that the dad she loved, the one who'd promised to keep her safe, saw her as a way out instead of a daughter. Lucy's cries couldn't stop it, her frail hands too weak to pull Emma back, and that helplessness only deepens the wound. This isn't some far-off tale, it's a stark reminder of how desperation can twist even the strongest bonds, a fear every parent and child in America might quietly carry. What happens when the ones you trust most let you down? Emma's story doesn't end there, though. That betrayal lights a fire in her, a spark that grows as she uncovers secrets her real father tied to the Mitchells. Caroline schemes and fights back with a grit that'd make any American proud. But at its core, it's about that first, brutal break, a father's choice in a cramped living room, trading his little girl for a clean slate. It's the kind of moment that'd stick with you, maybe make you hug your own kids or grandkids a little tighter, thankful for the trust that holds families together across this big, messy country. For Emma, it's the start of a battle she never asked for, a betrayal that reshapes her from a kid into a survivor, proving that even when family fails, the human spirit can still rise up and reclaim what's lost. Picture a 13-year-old girl named Emma, a kid who should be worrying about algebra homework or picking out a dress for her first school dance, instead stepping out of a sleek black car into a world that's as foreign as it is terrifying. She's just been ripped from her small-town American home, think picket fences and Friday night football games, because her dad, Robert, sold her to a millionaire named Alexander Mitchell to clear a debt. The moment her sneakers hit the gravel driveway of the Mitchell mansion, a sprawling estate that could dwarf a dozen football fields, Emma's freedom vanishes like smoke in the wind. The heavy oak door slams shut behind her, and she's swallowed by a place that's all polished marble and crystal chandeliers, but cold as a Midwest winter. She's not here as a guest, or even a bride in any real sense. She's a prisoner, and the people who run this house make sure she knows it. Caroline, Alexander's stepmother, stands there in a velvet dress that probably costs more than Robert's beat-up pickup truck, her eyes sharp as a hawk's, voice dripping with ice. From now on, you follow my rules. Emma's still got tears streaking her face, her voice trembling as she begs, I want to go home. But Caroline's laugh cuts through her like a shard of glass. Home? You think you have a home to go back to? Your father sold you. That's the first lash of the whip. Her freedom's gone, and the people she's stuck with see her as less than human, a debt repayment with a pulse. Then there's Diana, the housekeeper, a woman with a glare that could curdle milk, hauling in a tray of food and barking, stand up. When Emma doesn't move fast enough, Diana yanks her arm, so hard it feels like it might snap, snarling. You'll follow the rules here. Every mistake has consequences. The plate she's given? A scrap of stale bread and a bowl of cold, greasy broth, barely enough to keep a sparrow alive, while the smell of roast beef and fresh rolls wafts from the dining room where the family eats. Emma's stomach growls, but she's not allowed near that table. She's fed like a stray dog, a stark reminder that in this house, she's no one. Days turn into a grind of cruel oppression. She's handed a gray, crumpled dress and told she's not a child anymore, not a person with dreams, but Alexander Mitchell's wife, a title that means nothing but servitude. Caroline's rules pile on like chains. No going outside, no contacting anyone, no disobeying or else. Emma's forced to scrub floors on her knees, the rough bristles of the brush tearing into her small hands until they're cracked and bleeding, each drop of red a mark of her lost liberty. One morning, she spills a bucket of water, barely a gallon, and Diana's slap lands hard across her face, the sting echoing with a hiss. Useless brat, can't you do anything right? Caroline watches from a distance, her smirk cold as she mutters, a girl like her doesn't deserve to rest. It's not just work, it's punishment designed to break her down. Emma's feet ache, numb from hours of standing, her 4'10" frame hunched under the weight of it all, but she's got no say, no escape. The mansion's a prison. Its 10-foot walls and locked gates mocking any hope of running. One night, she tries creeping to the back door at 5 a.m., heart pounding as she grips the handle, but Diana's voice slices through the dark. "Where do you think you're going, little girl?" Two burly servants grab her, dragging her back as she screams, "Let me go." They toss her into a dark room, a windowless cell, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet, reeking of mold, where she's locked for 3 days with no food, no water, just damp walls and silence. Her throat burns, her stomach twists, and by day 3, she's too weak to even bang on the door, curling up on the cold floor, wondering if she'll die there. When they finally pull her out, Diana sneers, "Have you learned your lesson?" And Emma realizes this isn't just about control, it's about crushing her spirit. Alexander, the man she's supposed to call husband, is no savior either. He's tall, brooding, handsome in a way that might have turned heads at a county fair. But his dark eyes are empty when they flicker over her. She catches him one night, blocking his bedroom door, pleading, "Why do you let them treat me like this? Let me leave." His response is a faint, mocking laugh. "Where do you think you'll go? Your father sold you." He walks away, leaving her crumpled on the floor, his silence as oppressive as Caroline's slaps. In America, we pride ourselves on freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but for Emma, that's a fairy tale. She's trapped in a gilded cage, every move watched, every breath measured. Caroline takes it further, inventing new torments. One sunny day, she orders Emma to kneel in the yard, the ground scorching hot under a 90-degree sun, for no reason other than because I said so. Emma's knees blister, sweat stings her eyes, and after an hour, her legs are numb. But she grits her teeth, refusing to cry. Crying means they've won. Another time, Caroline drops a crystal glass on purpose, letting it shatter, then slaps Emma when she flinches, forcing her to pick up the shards with bare hands, blood dripping as the edges bite into her skin. Diana stands by, arms crossed, offering no help, just contempt. It's a relentless campaign to strip away Emma's dignity, to make her feel like she's nothing a shadow in a house of wealth and power. The oppression isn't just physical. It's emotional, mental, a daily grind that'd wear down even the toughest soul. Emma can't sleep without nightmares of iron cages, waking up soaked in sweat, her mind replaying the rules. Don't look Alexander in the eye. Don't eat with the family. Don't speak unless spoken to. She's a ghost in her own life, haunting the halls of a mansion that's more dungeon than home. Yet, there's a flicker of something inside her, a spark that refuses to die. She starts memorizing the servants' routines, the 5 a.m. food deliveries, Diana's 10 p.m. room checks, because even in this suffocating prison, she's plotting. That loss of freedom, that cruel oppression, it's the crucible that forges her. In America, we tell stories of pioneers and rebels, folks who fought for every inch of their liberty, and Emma's cut from that cloth. She's not just a victim. She's a kid who's been robbed of everything: her family, her childhood, her rights, and still find a way to claw back. The Mitchells see her as a debt settled, a thing to be used, but she's more than that. The beatings, the starvation, the locked doors, they don't just take her freedom, they fuel her resolve. One day, she'll turn that spark into a fire, uncovering secrets about her own bloodline and Caroline's crimes, teaming up with Alexander to bring the whole rotten empire down. But for now, she's a 13-year-old in a gray dress, kneeling under a brutal sun, hands bleeding, voice silenced, freedom a distant memory. It's a story that hits hard in America, where we hold liberty dear, where we teach our kids they can be anything. Yet here's Emma, proving that freedom's not a given, that it can be stolen in an instant by the very people meant to protect you. Her oppression's a dark mirror to our ideals, a reminder of what's at stake when power turns cruel, and a testament to the quiet strength that can grow even in the tightest chains. Imagine a 13-year-old girl named Emma, a kid who should be giggling with friends at a 4th of July picnic or sneaking an extra scoop of ice cream at a county fair, instead standing in a cavernous room of the Mitchell mansion, her sneakers scuffing a floor polished to a mirror shine. She's just been torn from her small-town American life, think Friday Night Lights, and Neighbors Who Know Your Name, because her dad, Robert, sold her to Alexander Mitchell, a millionaire, to wipe out a debt that hung over their family like a storm cloud. The heavy door slammed shut, locking her into a world of wealth and misery. And there he is, Alexander, her so-called husband, towering over her at maybe 6 feet tall, his dark hair swept back, his handsome face carved from stone, and his eyes as cold as a January night in Minnesota. She's 13, barely 4 feet 10 inches, still clutching the frayed edges of childhood. And now she's his wife, a title slapped on her like a barcode, meaningless except as a transaction. In America, we dream of marriage as a union of love, a promise sealed with rings and roses. But for Emma, it's a prison sentence, a loveless sham where the groom doesn't even pretend to care. Alexander doesn't greet her with warmth or words. He just casts a glance her way, his brooding stare empty of anything human, and mutters, "Behave yourself, or you'll regret it," before turning on his heel and walking away, leaving her alone in a room that's 20 feet wide and twice as long, dripping with luxury white sheets, crystal chandeliers, but offering no comfort. That's the first sting of his complicity. He's not the one tying her up or slapping her face, but he's the silent partner in her nightmare, the husband who watches her suffer and does nothing. Caroline, his stepmother, steps in like a drill sergeant in a velvet dress, her voice cutting through the air. "You're Alexander's wife now, so act like it." But it's clear this isn't about love, it's about control. Emma's days become a blur of cruel oppression, scrubbing floors until her hands bleed, kneeling in the yard under a 90-degree sun until her knees blister, all while Alexander drifts through the mansion like a ghost, his presence as useless as a screen door on a submarine. She catches him sometimes, his tall frame passing by as she scrubs dishes or wipes blood from her fingers after picking up shards of a glass Caroline smashed on purpose. His dark eyes flicker over her maybe a second, maybe 2, then he keeps walking, offering no word, no hand, no hint of compassion. It's not just neglect. It's a choice, a refusal to step in that weighs on Emma heavier than the chores or the slaps. One night, desperation drives her to confront him, blocking his bedroom door after a long day of Diana's barking and Caroline sneers. "Why won't you say anything?" she pleads, her voice cracking, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Why do you let them treat me like this? Let me leave." Alexander frowns, his sharp features tightening, and lets out a faint, mocking laugh that chills her to the bone. "Where do you think you'll go? Your father sold you. You have nowhere left." Then he brushes past her, shutting the door with a thud that echoes in her chest, leaving her crumpled on the floor, sobbing into the silence. That moment crystallizes the loveless marriage she's tied to a man who won't lift a finger, a husband in name only, complicit in her torment by his inaction. In America, we tell our kids fairy tales of Prince Charming, of love conquering all, but Emma's story flips that script. Her prince is a coward, and the castle's a jail. Alexander's not cruel in the way Caroline is, with her calculated punishments like locking Emma in a 6 by 6 foot dark room for 3 days with no food or water or Diana, with her slaps that sting like a whip. He doesn't raise a hand or shout orders, but his silence is its own kind of cruelty, a passive betrayal that gnaws at Emma's hope. She's a kid, still dreaming of a life beyond these walls, and he's the one person who could help, the one with the power to say stop, but he doesn't. He's there when Caroline forces her to kneel in the yard, the sun beating down for an hour until she's dizzy and faint. He's there when Diana starves her, giving her stale bread while the family feasts on roast beef 20 feet away. He's there when she's dragged back from her failed escape, screaming until her throat's raw. Each time, he sees that his dark eyes catch hers for a fleeting moment, and each time, he turns away, leaving her to the wolves. It's a marriage without a single shred of affection, a legal tie that binds her to a man who treats her like furniture, invisible unless she's in his way. Emma's not naive. She knows he's not her savior, but she can't fathom why he lets it happen. Is he scared? Weak? Heartless? She gets her answer one night, weeks into her captivity, when she corners him again, her voice trembling with rage. "Do you have a heart? Don't you see I'm just a child?" Alexander stares at her, his jaw tight, and for a second, something flickers in his eyes, anger, maybe regret, but all he says is, "Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me," before shutting her out again. That's the gut punch. He's complicit not because he enjoys her pain, but because he's too spineless to fight it. In America, we admire folks who stand up. Think of the lone rancher facing down a gang in an old Western, but Alexander's no hero. He's a bystander in his own house, letting Caroline run the show. Emma's left to fend for herself. A 13-year-old in a loveless trap. Her husband, a shadow who won't even throw her a lifeline. It's not just the lack of love that breaks her, it's the weight of his apathy. The way he shrugs off her suffering like it's a spilled coffee stain on his $500 shirt. She's forced to grow up fast, her childhood stripped away with every chore, every punishment, every cold glance from the man she's tied to. But that complicity, that refusal to act, plants a seed in her. She starts watching him, studying the cracks in his facade, how he flinches when Caroline snaps, how his hands clench when she's around. One day, she digs deeper, sneaking into the library, a room that smells of old leather and secrets, and finds a document. Alexander's not the true heir, just an illegitimate son controlled by Caroline like a puppet on strings. It clicks he's a prisoner too, in his own way, but unlike her, he's given up. That night, she confronts him again, holding the paper like a weapon. "Why do you let her control you? She's ruined my life. Don't let her ruin yours." Alexander's face shifts fear, then fury, and he snaps. "Do you think you're the only victim here?" It's the first crack in his armor, a hint that this loveless marriage isn't just her burden. It's his cage too. But he's still complicit, still silent too long, and Emma knows she can't wait for him to save her. She has to save herself. That realization fuels her, turning her from a scared kid into a force of will. She'll use his weakness, his complicity, against him, pulling him into her plan to topple Caroline, to break free of this sham marriage and the mansion's grip. In America, we root for the underdog, the kid who fights back against the odds, and Emma's that kid stuck with a husband who won't love her, won't help her, but who she'll drag into the light anyway. The loveless marriage isn't just a plot point. It's the furnace that forges her strength, Alexander's inaction, the anvil she hammers against. By the end, when Caroline's hauled off in handcuffs and Emma walks away from the Mitchell name, it's not just freedom she's won, it's the triumph over a man who could have been her ally, but chose to be a shadow. Her story's a dark twist on the American dream, a reminder that love's not guaranteed, that even in marriage, you can be alone, but also proof that even a 13-year-old can rewrite her fate when the one who should care won't. Picture a 13-year-old girl named Emma, a kid who should be sprawled on her bedroom floor with a stack of comic books or pedaling her bike down a quiet American street where the air smells of fresh-cut grass and barbecue smoke. Instead, she's trapped in the Mitchell mansion, a sprawling fortress of wealth that could swallow a small-town high school whole, her freedom traded away by her dad, Robert, to settle a debt with Alexander Mitchell, a millionaire she's forced to call husband. The mansion's halls stretch on for what feels like 50 yards, lined with portraits of stern-faced strangers and chandeliers that glitter like 1,000 tiny stars. But it's a prison, not a palace, and Emma's a captive in a gray dress, her hands raw from scrubbing floors under the watchful eyes of Caroline, Alexander's icy stepmother, and Diana, the housekeeper with a slap as quick as a rattlesnake strike. She's been there weeks, maybe a month. Time blurs when every day's a grind of chores and cruelty, when a restless itch starts gnawing at her. Why her? Why this house? Why does Caroline, with her velvet dresses and voice sharp as a butcher's knife, keep her alive instead of tossing her out or worse? In America, we grow up on stories of truth, setting you free. Think Woodward and Bernstein cracking Watergate wide open. So Emma, small as she's at barely 4 feet 10 inches, starts digging, driven by a need to understand the nightmare she's landed in. It begins with whispers, stolen moments when the servants think she's just a shadow. Sophia, a maid with kinder eyes than most, lets slip a hint one day in a laundry room, her voice low as she folds sheets. Alexander isn't the true heir of the Mitchell family. Emma freezes, her heart thumping like a drumline at a homecoming game. What does that mean? Sophia's words are a thread, and Emma tugs, sneaking into the library one moonless night, a room that smells of old books and secrets, its shelves towering 10 feet high. She fumbles with a wooden cabinet, her fingers trembling as she pries it open, revealing stacks of yellowed papers. There, buried among the files, she finds it. Alexander Mitchell, illegitimate child. Her breath catches her husband. The brooding man who barely looks at her isn't the rightful son of this empire. He's a bastard, brought back after his servant mother died, controlled by Caroline like a puppet on a 5-foot string. It's a bombshell, the kind of twist you'd see in a primetime drama, but it's just the start. Emma's gut tells her there's more, something about her own place in this twisted puzzle. So she keeps searching, her small hands flipping pages under the faint glow of moonlight spilling through a window 8 feet tall. Then she finds a document that hits like a thunderclap. Lucy Harris, servant of the Mitchell family, pregnant by the master of the house, payment to Robert Harris to claim the child as his own. Lucy Harris, her mom. Emma's knees buckle, the paper slipping to the floor with a soft thud. She's not Robert's daughter. She's a Mitchell, an illegitimate child of the family's patriarch, hidden away through a deal that traded cash for silence. Her whole life's a lie. Her dad's not her dad. Her mom's a victim of this house, too. And Caroline's known all along. In America, we cling to family like it's sacred, the backbone of our apple pie dreams. But Emma's discovering hers was built on quicksand, a secret buried under a mansion worth millions. That truth shakes her to her core, her 13 years of backyard barbecues and bedtime stories unraveling into a plot that'd make a Hollywood screenwriter blush. But there's no time to cry. Footsteps echo outside, and she stuffs the paper in her dress just as Diana bursts in, eyes narrow as a hawk's. "What are you doing?" Emma mumbles, cleaning, her heart racing at 100 beats a minute, and Diana lets it slide. But the clock's ticking now. Caroline can't know she's on her. The discovery flips everything. Emma's not just a debt payment. She's a threat, a living secret that could topple Caroline's grip on the Mitchell fortune if it got out. She confronts Alexander the next morning in his study, a room with walls lined with books he never reads, shoving the paper under his nose. "Did you know about this?" His face goes pale, his 6-foot frame stiffening as he scans the words, then mutters, "Caroline never told me, but she knew." His voice cracks, and for the first time, Emma sees fear in those dark eyes, a crack in the wall of his complicity. "If you're here because of a debt, so am I," he admits, and she realizes he's a prisoner too, chained by the same lies, though he's let them bind him while she's fighting to break free. That shared truth binds them, a fragile thread in a house of deceit, but it's not enough. Caroline's the real enemy, the spider at the web's center. Emma's mind races. Why keep her alive? Why marry her to Alexander? The answer dawns as she digs deeper, sneaking into Caroline's office one night when the house is quiet, her pulse pounding like a jackhammer. She finds the key Diana hides in a kitchen drawer, 3 inches of metal that unlocks a filing cabinet stuffed with secrets, and there it is. Proof of Caroline's embezzlement. Millions siphoned from the estate, shady deals with businessmen, and a letter from the patriarch himself. "If my daughter returns, Caroline has betrayed our agreement. Bring this to Alexander Mitchell." Emma's breath stops. She's not just a secret. She's leverage, a pawn Caroline's kept to secure her power, marrying her to Alexander to tie up loose ends in a twisted dynasty game. In America, we love a good conspiracy, think Area 51 or JFK, but this is personal, a family skeleton rattling in a closet worth more than a Silicon Valley startup. The truths pile up. Her birth, Alexander's illegitimacy, Caroline's crimes, each one a brick in a wall of deception she's determined to smash. She's no detective, just a kid with a borrowed courage, but she's got the grit of a pioneer crossing the plains, fueled by a need to reclaim her story. The discoveries aren't just facts, they're weapons, and she wields them with a 13-year-old's fury, pulling Alexander in her plan. We can bring her down. His nod is hesitant, but it's a start, a spark in a man who's been a shadow too long. They leak the evidence to Ethan Foster, a journalist who'd make Woodward proud, and set a trap a press conference where Alexander, all 6 feet of him, steps up and declares, "My stepmother has embezzled millions," while Emma holds up the patriarch's letter. "I'm the illegitimate daughter of the Mitchell family." The room explodes, cameras flashing like 4th of July fireworks, and Caroline's empire crumbles as the cops slap handcuffs on her wrists. Those hidden truths dug up from dusty files in a mansion that smells of money and mold-free Emma, not just from the house, but from the lie of her life. In America, we cheer for the little guy who unearths the big secret, the kid who turns the tables on the powerful, and Emma's that kid her discovery's a beacon that lights her way out of darkness. She walks away from the Mitchell name, settling in Charleston, a southern town where the air's thick with magnolia and second chances, starting over with a job at a cafe, then a coffee shop with Lucas, a guy who gets her scars. The truths she uncovered about her blood, her husband, her captor aren't just plot twists. They're her emancipation, proof that even at 13, you can rewrite your fate when you dare to dig. It's a story that hits home in a country built on chasing truth, where we tell our kids to question, to fight, and Emma does both, turning hidden lies into a ladder to freedom. Picture a 13-year-old girl named Emma, a kid who should be sprawled on her bedroom floor with a stack of comic books or pedaling her bike down a quiet American street where the air smells of fresh-cut grass and barbecue smoke. Instead, she's trapped in the Mitchell mansion, a sprawling fortress of wealth that could swallow a small-town high school whole, her freedom traded away by her dad, Robert, to settle a debt with Alexander Mitchell, a millionaire she's forced to call husband. The mansion's halls stretch on for what feels like 50 yards, lined with portraits of stern-faced strangers and chandeliers that glitter like 1,000 tiny stars. But it's a prison, not a palace, and Emma's a captive in a gray dress, her hands raw from scrubbing floors under the watchful eyes of Caroline, Alexander's icy stepmother, and Diana, the housekeeper with a slap as quick as a rattlesnake strike. She's been there weeks, maybe a month. Time blurs when every day's a grind of chores and cruelty, when a restless itch starts gnawing at her. Why her? Why this house? Why does Caroline, with her velvet dresses and voice sharp as a butcher's knife, keep her alive instead of tossing her out or worse? In America, we grow up on stories of truth, setting you free. Think Woodward and Bernstein cracking Watergate wide open, so Emma, small as she's at barely 4 feet 10 inches, starts digging, driven by a need to understand the nightmare she's landed in. It begins with whispers, stolen moments when the servants think she's just a shadow. Sophia, a maid with kinder eyes than most, lets slip a hint one day in the laundry room, her voice low as she folds sheets. Alexander isn't the true heir of the Mitchell family. Emma freezes, her heart thumping like a drumline at a homecoming game. What does that mean? Sophia's words are a thread, and Emma tugs, sneaking into the library one moonless night, a room that smells of old books and secrets, its shelves towering 10 feet high. She fumbles with a wooden cabinet, her fingers trembling as she pries it open, revealing stacks of yellowed papers. There, buried among the files, she finds it. Alexander Mitchell, illegitimate child. Her breath catches her husband, the brooding man who barely looks at her, isn't the rightful son of this empire. He's a bastard, brought back after his servant mother died, controlled by Caroline like a puppet on a 5-foot string. It's a bombshell, the kind of twist you'd see in a primetime drama, but it's just the start. Emma's gut tells her there's more, something about her own place in this twisted puzzle. So she keeps searching, her small hands flipping pages under the faint glow of moonlight spilling through a window 8 feet tall. Then she finds a document that hits like a thunderclap. Lucy Harris, servant of the Mitchell family, pregnant by the master of the house, payment to Robert Harris to claim the child as his own. Lucy Harris, her mom. Emma's knees buckle, the paper slipping to the floor with a soft thud. She's not Robert's daughter. She's a Mitchell, an illegitimate child of the family's patriarch, hidden away through a deal that traded cash for silence. Her whole life's a lie. Her dad's not her dad. Her mom's a victim of this house too, and Caroline's known it all along. In America, We cling to family like it's sacred, the backbone of our apple pie dreams. But Emma's discovering hers was built on quicksand, a secret buried under a mansion worth millions. That truth shakes her to her core, her 13 years of backyard barbecues and bedtime stories unraveling into a plot that'd make a Hollywood screenwriter blush. But there's no time to cry. Footsteps echo outside, and she stuffs the paper in her dress just as Diana bursts in, eyes narrow as a hawk's. "What are you doing?" Emma mumbles, "Cleaning," her heart racing at 100 beats a minute, and Diana lets it slide, but the clock's ticking now. Caroline can't know she's onto her. The discovery flips everything. Emma's not just a debt payment. She's a threat, a living secret that could topple Caroline's grip on the Mitchell fortune if it got out. She confronts Alexander the next morning in his study, a room with walls lined with books he never reads, shoving the paper under his nose. "Did you know about this?" His face goes pale, his 6-foot frame stiffening as he scans the words, then mutters, "Caroline never told me, but she knew." His voice cracks, and for the first time, Emma sees fear in those dark eyes, a crack in the wall of his complicity. "If you're here because of a debt, so am I," he admits, and she realizes he's a prisoner too, chained by the same lies, though he's let them bind him while she's fighting to break free. That shared truth binds them, a fragile thread in a house of deceit, but it's not enough. Caroline's the real enemy, the spider at the web center. Emma's mind races. Why keep her alive? Why marry her to Alexander? The answer dawns as she digs deeper, sneaking into Caroline's office one night when the house is quiet, her pulse pounding like a jackhammer. She finds the key Diana hides in a kitchen drawer, 3 inches of metal that unlocks a filing cabinet stuffed with secrets, and there it is. Proof of Caroline's embezzlement, millions siphoned from the estate, shady deals with businessmen, and a letter from the patriarch himself. "If my daughter returns, Caroline has betrayed our agreement. Bring this to Alexander Mitchell." Emma's breath stops. She's not just a secret. She's leverage, a pawn Caroline's kept to secure her power, marrying her to Alexander to tie up loose ends in a twisted dynasty game. In America, we love a good conspiracy, think Area 51 or JFK, but this is personal, a family skeleton rattling in a closet worth more than a Silicon Valley startup. The truths pile up. Her birth, Alexander's illegitimacy, Caroline's crimes, each one a brick in a wall of deception she's determined to smash. She's no detective, just a kid with a borrowed courage. But she's got the grit of a pioneer crossing the plains, fueled by a need to reclaim her story. The discoveries aren't just facts, they're weapons, and she wields them with a 13-year-old's fury, pulling Alexander into her plan. "We can bring her down." His nod is hesitant, but it's a start, a spark in a man who's been a shadow too long. They leak the evidence to Ethan Foster, a journalist who'd make Woodward proud, and set a trap. A press conference where Alexander, all 6 feet of him, steps up and declares, "My stepmother has embezzled millions," while Emma holds up the patriarch's letter. "I'm the illegitimate daughter of the Mitchell family." The room explodes, cameras flashing like 4th of July fireworks, and Caroline's empire crumbles as the cops slap handcuffs on her wrists. Those hidden truths dug up from dusty files in a mansion that smells of money and mold-free Emma, not just from the house, but from the lie of her life. In America, we cheer for the little guy who unearths the big secret, the kid who turns the tables on the powerful, and Emma's that kid. Her discovery's a beacon that lights her way out of darkness. She walks away from the Mitchell name, settling in Charleston, a southern town where the air's thick with magnolia and second chances, starting over with a job at a cafe, then a coffee shop with Lucas, a guy who gets her scars. The truths she uncovered about her blood, her husband, her captor aren't just plot twists, they're her emancipation, proof that even at 13, you can rewrite your fate when you dare to dig. It's a story that hits home in a country built on chasing truth, where we tell our kids to question, to fight, and Emma does both, turning hidden lies into a ladder to freedom. Picture a 13-year-old girl named Emma, a kid who should be kicking a soccer ball across a dusty field in small-town America or sipping lemonade on a porch swing while cicadas hum in the summer heat. Instead, She's locked inside the Mitchell mansion, a towering estate that could dwarf a city block, its marble floors and crystal chandeliers gleaming with wealth she'll never touch. She's been sold here by her dad, Robert, traded like a pawn to erase a debt to Alexander Mitchell, a millionaire she's forced to call husband, though his dark eyes barely flicker her way. The air's heavy with oppression from the moment she steps inside, her sneakers squeaking on floors she'll soon scrub until her hands bleed. Caroline, Alexander's stepmother, rules this place like a queen in a velvet dress worth more than a year's groceries back home, her voice slicing through Emma. "You're his wife now. Follow my rules." Diana, the housekeeper, enforces those rules with a slap that stings like a wasp, barking, "Useless brat," when Emma spills a cup of water, her small frame trembling under the weight of their cruelty. At 4 feet 10 inches, she's a speck in this 50-yard-long prison, forced to kneel in the yard under a blazing 90-degree sun until her knees blister, locked in a 6 by 6 foot dark room for 3 days with no food or water when she dares to run, her throat so dry she can't scream. In America, we grow up believing justice is our birthright. Think courtroom dramas where the gavel bangs and the bad guy pays. But for Emma, it's a distant dream, crushed under Caroline's heel as she stars on stale bread while the family feasts 20 feet away. Yet that spark of resilience flickers in her, a quiet rebellion brewing as she uncovers truths. She's a Mitchell, an illegitimate daughter of the patriarch, and Caroline's been embezzling millions, hiding secrets to cling to power. It's a conspiracy that'd make a cable news anchor salivate, and Emma, small as she is, grabs it like a lifeline, determined to turn the tables. She sneaks into Caroline's office one night, heart pounding at 100 beats a minute, using a 3-inch key swiped from a kitchen drawer to unlock a cabinet stuffed with proof-forged papers, shady contracts, a letter from her real father warning against Caroline's betrayal. That's when justice stops being a dream and becomes a mission. She's no lawyer, no cop, just a kid with the grit of a Wild West sheriff. And she pulls Alexander, her silent husband, into the fight, confronting him in his study, a room of unread books and stale cigar smoke. "She's ruined us both, help me stop her." His 6-foot frame tenses, his dark eyes flashing with fear, then resolve. And he nods, a crack in his complicity she's widened with truth. Together, they plot a rebellion rooted in a hunger for justice that'd make any American proud, the kind we cheer for in stories of David slaying Goliath. They contact Ethan Foster, a journalist with a nose for scandals that'd rival Watergate, sending him the documents. Millions embezzled, a family secret buried, a 13-year-old girl turned pawn. Ethan's voice crackles over the phone. "This'll cause a stir," and Emma replies, "Good," her voice steady as steel. The Traps set a press conference, a stage to unveil Caroline's crimes, and they lure her there with a lie. The Mitchell family has an announcement. On the day, Caroline strides in, dripping in diamonds and pride, expecting to bask in her power, her dress shimmering under lights brighter than a stadium's. Alexander steps to the microphone, all 6 feet of him shaking off years of silence. "My stepmother, Caroline Mitchell, has embezzled millions from the estate." The room gasps, cameras whirring like a swarm of bees, and Emma, small but unbowed, holds up the patriarch's letter. "I'm the illegitimate daughter of the Mitchell family. She's kept me here to hide it." Caroline's face drains of color, her scream piercing the chaos. "No, that's impossible." But the evidence is ironclad, a stack of papers that'd bury her in any courtroom from Maine to California. Reporters scramble, questions flying like bullets, and then the cops march in, badges glinting, voices firm. "Caroline Mitchell, you're under arrest for financial fraud and abuse of power." Her eyes blaze with hate, locking on Emma. "You'll pay for this," but Emma stands tall, her 4-foot, 10 frame a pillar of defiance as handcuffs snap around Caroline's wrists. The triumph of justice unfolds live. A spectacle Americans eat up. Think O.J.'s trial or Nixon's fall, and Caroline's dragged away, kicking and screaming, her empire crumbling like a house of cards in a tornado. The courtroom's next, a wood-paneled chamber where the judge's voice booms. Guilty. 20 years in prison. Caroline's pale, shackled, her velvet swapped for an orange jumpsuit. No longer a queen but a convict, her glare meeting Emma's steady gaze one last time. In America, we love when the scales tip, right when the little guy wins, when the wicked pay and Emma's victory is that sweet taste of justice we crave. She's not just a kid anymore. She's a force, her rebellion forging a path to this moment where Caroline's stripped of everything: power, money, freedom. The news explodes. Mitchell empire collapses. Caroline faces 20 years, and Emma walks out of the courthouse into a clear blue sky. The air crisp with possibility. Alexander at her side. Finally free too. You did it. She shakes her head. We did it. And that shared triumph seals their break from the past. Justice isn't just Caroline's fall. It's Emma's rise, a reclaiming of her life from a 13-year-old sold into misery to a girl who toppled a tyrant with nothing but courage and truth. She leaves the Mitchell name behind, settling in Charleston, a southern town where the breeze carries salt and second chances, working at a cafe where the coffee's hot and the smiles are warm. She meets Lucas, a guy with messy brown hair and a past as scarred as hers, and together they open a coffee shop, a little haven where the tables are scratched but the laughter's real. Their wedding's simple, in a garden by the sea, her white dress glowing under a Carolina sun, no diamonds but all the justice she's won. That triumph isn't just a happy ending, it's a testament to the American belief that right can prevail, that a kid can take on a giant and win. Caroline's behind bars, her cell a 10 by 10 box of concrete and regret, her power dust, while Emma's free, her resilience a beacon that lights up a new life. In a country built on fighting for what's fair, think abolitionists, suffragettes, civil rights marchers. Emma's story hits home, a 13-year-old proving justice isn't handed out, it's claimed. She didn't just survive, she struck back, turning evidence into a gavel that banged loud enough to shake a dynasty. Charleston's her fresh start, Lucas her partner in a life she's built, not inherited, every cup of coffee a sip of victory. The triumph of justice isn't quiet, it's loud, messy, glorious, a kid in sneakers outsmarting a millionaire's schemes, a courtroom silencing a villain's threats, a girl walking away with her head high. It's what we root for in America. The bad guy down, the good guy up, and Emma's both. Her 1,600-mile journey from prisoner to free woman, a story that'd make any patriot nod and say, that's how it's done. Imagine a 13-year-old girl named Emma, a kid who should be sprawled across a blanket at a Labor Day picnic, her fingers sticky with watermelon juice, or hunched over a library table with friends, giggling about a crush from homeroom. Instead, she's stepping out of the shadow of the Mitchell mansion, a colossal estate that could swallow a dozen Main Street blocks. Its marble floors and 10-foot walls a prison she's known for too long. She's been sold here by her dad, Robert, traded like a yard sale trinket to erase a debt to Alexander Mitchell, a millionaire whose dark eyes never softened for her, even as she was forced to call him husband. Inside those walls, her life was a grind of despair. Caroline, Alexander's stepmother, ruled with a voice cold as a Dakota blizzard. Her velvet dress is a stark contrast to the gray rags Emma wore, while Diana, the housekeeper, slapped her face raw for spilling a cup of water, barely a pint, snarling, "Useless brat." At 4 feet 10 inches, Emma was a speck in that 50-yard sprawl, her hands bleeding from scrubbing floors, her knees blistered from kneeling in the yard under a 90-degree sun, her body trembling after 3 days locked in a 6 by 6 foot dark room, with no food or water, punishment for daring to run. In America, we tell our kids they can rise above anything. Think Horatio Alger tales of rags to riches, but Emma's world was a cage, her childhood stolen by a family that saw her as a debt paid, not a person. Yet she fought, uncovering truths that'd make a tabloid blush. She's a Mitchell, an illegitimate daughter of the patriarch, and Caroline's been embezzling millions to cling to power. With a resilience that'd make a pioneer proud, she teamed with Alexander, her silent husband, to topple Caroline, leaking evidence to a journalist named Ethan Foster and watching justice unfold as Caroline was cuffed at a press conference, her empire dust after a 20-year sentence. That victory was sweet, a gavel bang echoing American faith in right prevailing. But for Emma, it's not the end, it's the start of redemption and a new beginning, a chance to reclaim the life she was denied. She walks out of the courthouse into a sky so blue it hurts, the air crisp with freedom, Alexander at her side, his 6-foot frame finally unbowed. "You did it." She shakes her head. "We did it." But her eyes are already on the horizon. The Mitchell name a shackle she's ready to shed. In America, we love a fresh start, think settlers heading west. Immigrants stepping off boats with nothing but hope, and Emma's chasing that dream, refusing the family's tainted inheritance, determined to build something her own. She lands in Charleston, a southern town where the air is thick with magnolia and salt, streets lined with clapboard houses and oaks dripping Spanish moss, a world away from the mansion's cold luxury. It's a place where folks nod hello and the sun sets slow over the sea, offering the quiet she's craved. She's 14 now, her hands still rough from scrubbing, but her spirit unbroken, and she finds work at a cafe in the town square, a little spot with checkered tablecloths and a bell that jingles when the door swings open. Mrs. Mary, the owner, a woman in her 50s with a smile warm as fresh biscuits, doesn't pry about Emma's past, just says, "You seem strong, work hard, and you've got a place here." Emma nods, tying an apron around her waist, learning to pour coffee and chat with regulars, her laugh starting to come easy, a sound she'd forgotten she could make. In America, redemption's not just forgiveness, it's rebuilding, brick by brick, and Emma's doing it, pouring every ounce of her grit into this new life. The cafe becomes her anchor, the smell of roasted beans and the clink of cups of rhythm she controls, not Caroline or Diana. She saves her tips, a few dollars at a time, dreaming of something bigger, and then Lucas walks in one day, a tall guy with messy brown hair and eyes that carry their own scars. He orders a black coffee. "Bitter keeps me awake," and she quips, "Awake for what?" He grins, "To remind myself I'm alive." And it's like he's speaking her language, an echo of the nights she clung to hope in that dark room. They talk first over coffee, then on walks down Charleston cobblestone streets, and she opens up, not all at once, but enough. The mansion, the betrayal, the fight. Lucas listens, no judgment, just a nod that says he's been through his own hell, and that quiet understanding stitches her wounds tighter than any words could. Together, they dream bigger, pooling their savings, maybe $500 between them, and opening a coffee shop of their own, a little haven with scratch tables and a chalkboard menu, where folks linger over mugs and stories. It's not fancy, not a penny of Mitchell money in it, but it's theirs, built from scratch, a redemption carved out of sweat and second chances. Emma's 15 when they marry, a simple wedding in a garden by the sea, her white dress glowing under a Carolina sun. No diamonds or velvet, just Lucas's hand in hers, and a vow that's real, not forced. "You ready?" he asks, and she smiles. "I've never been more ready." Her voice steady, her heart light. In America, we root for the comeback kid, think Rocky running those steps, or a farmer replanting after a flood, and Emma's that kid, her new beginning a triumph over a past that tried to break her. Charleston's her soil, Lucas her roots, the coffee shop her bloom, every customer a thread in a life she's woven, not inherited. The mansion's a memory now, its 10-foot walls and cold beds replaced by a clapboard house with a porch swing where she and Lucas sit at dusk, the sea breeze whispering peace. Caroline's in a 10-by-10 cell, her power gone, her name mud, but Emma doesn't gloat, she's too busy living. News of the trial, Mitchell faces 20 years, fades into yesterday's paper. And Emma's today is coffee steam and Lucas's laugh, a redemption that's not loud but deep, a new beginning that's hers alone. She's learned to trust again, not the blind faith of a kid who trusted Robert, but a cautious, earned trust in Mrs. Mary, in Lucas, in herself. The scars on her hands fade, her nightmares thin, replaced by dreams of expanding the shop. Maybe a kid of her own someday, a life where she's not a prisoner, but a builder. In America, we celebrate starting over. Think Ellis Island, the gold rush, and Emma's story fits that mold. A 13-year-old who clawed out of a gilded cage to plant her flag in a town 1,600 miles from her past. She doesn't look back, doesn't need to. The Mitchells took her childhood, but she took her future, crafting it with calloused hands and a heart that refused to quit. Lucas gets it. His own past a shadow he's left behind, and together they're a team, not a dynasty. Their coffee shop a monument to what you can make when you're free. Emma's redemption isn't just escaping, it's thriving, turning betrayal into belonging, captivity into creation. She's no heiress, no victim, just a girl who found her way. Her new beginning, a quiet victory that'd make any American nod and say, that's the spirit. Her life's simple now: coffee, love, a sea breeze, but it's everything, a testament that even after the darkest nights, you can step into the sun and call it home. Picture a 13-year-old girl named Emma, a kid who should be sprawled across a grassy hill in small-town America, chasing fireflies as dust settles over a 4th of July barbecue, or huddled with friends in a treehouse, swapping ghost stories under a flashlight's glow. Instead, she's standing in the cavernous entry of the Mitchell mansion, a sprawling estate that could dwarf a football stadium. Its marble floors cold under her sneakers, and its 10-foot walls locking her in like a vault. She's been sold here by her dad, Robert, traded like a pawn to erase a debt to Alexander Mitchell, a millionaire whose brooding dark eyes offer no warmth, even as she's forced to call him husband. The air's thick with menace from the start. Caroline, Alexander's stepmother, looms in a velvet dress that costs more than a year's rent, her voice slicing through. Emma, you're his wife now. Follow my rules. Diana, the housekeeper, enforces those rules with a slap that lands hard across Emma's face when she spills a cup of water, barely a pint, snarling, useless brat. At 4 feet 10 inches, Emma's a wisp in this 50-yard prison, her hands bleeding from scrubbing floors, her knees blistered from kneeling in the yard under a 90-degree sun, her body trembling after 3 days locked in a 6 by 6 foot dark room, with no food or water, a punishment for trying to run. In America, we raise our kids on moral tales. Think Aesop's fables or Sunday school lessons where hard work pays off and good triumphs. But Emma's story starts as a grim twist on that promise, a test of everything we teach about strength, justice, and destiny. She's fed stale bread while the family feasts 20 feet away, her cries ignored as Caroline smirks. You don't deserve to rest, and Alexander, all 6 feet of him, turns away, complicit in silence. Yet through this crucible, Emma learns lessons that'd resonate from a Nebraska farm to a New York high-rise, truths about the power within, the certainty of reckoning, and the fight to shape your own life. The first lesson hits hard. The greatest strength lies inside. Emma's not a superhero, not a soldier, just a kid who'd rather be trading baseball cards, but when she's curled in that dark room, throat so dry she can't scream, something sparks a resilience that'd make a pioneer crossing the Rockies proud. She stops crying, stops begging, and starts watching, her heart pounding at 100 beats a minute as she memorizes the servants' routines. The back door opens at 5 a.m. Diana sleeps deep after 10 p.m. She tries to escape again, caught and dragged back, but even 3 more days in darkness can't snuff that spark. It's the kind of grit Americans cheer. Think Rocky taking punches or a farmer replanting after a flood. A quiet, stubborn will that says, I won't break. That strength grows when she uncovers secrets. She's a Mitchell, an illegitimate daughter of the patriarch, and Caroline's been embezzling millions to cling to power. Sneaking into Caroline's office with a 3-inch key swiped from a kitchen drawer, she finds proof, forged papers, shady deals, a letter from her real father, and it's not just evidence. It's fuel, turning her resilience into rebellion. In America, we tell our kids they've got what it takes, and Emma proves it. Her inner strength, a lighthouse in a storm she didn't choose. The second lesson follows. Justice always catches up. Caroline's a tyrant, her velvet hiding a heart black as coal, and she thinks she's untouchable, smirking as Emma kneels in the yard or starves in the dark. But Emma, small as she is, won't let it stand. She pulls Alexander in her fight, confronting him in his study, a room of unread books and stale air. "She's ruined us, stop her." His nod is reluctant, but it's enough, and they leak the truth to Ethan Foster, a journalist who'd make any newsroom proud. The press conference is a reckoning. Alexander, all 6 feet of him, steps up. "My stepmother embezzled millions," and Emma holds the letter high. "I'm a Mitchell." The room erupts, cameras flashing like a 4th of July finale, and Caroline's hauled off in handcuffs, her scream, "You'll pay," drowned by Justice's roar. The courtroom seals it. Guilty. 20 years. Caroline's pale, shackled, her power dust, a lesson Americans love. Think Capone behind bars or Nixon's fall, that no one escapes the scales forever. Emma's fight proves it. The wicked pay, a moral etched in a country built on fairness, from frontier sheriffs to civil rights marches. The third lesson ties it all together. Only those who stand up can take charge of their destiny. Emma could have stayed a victim, a shadow in a mansion worth millions, but she didn't. She took the evidence, her strength, her rebellion, and rewrote her story, walking away from the Mitchell name to start over in Charleston, a southern town where the air's thick with salt and second chances. At 14, she's working at a cafe, a little spot with checkered tablecloths and a bell that jingles, her hands still rough but her smile growing under Mrs. Mary's warm gaze. "Work hard. You've got a place here." She meets Lucas, a guy with messy brown hair and scars of his own. Over black coffee, "Bitter keeps me alive," he says, and she gets it, a bond forged in survival. They open a coffee shop, a scratch table haven built with their own $500, no Mitchell money, just sweat and dreams. Their wedding's simple, in a garden by the sea, her white dress glowing, Lucas's hand steady. "You ready?" She nods. Never been more ready. Her destiny hers at last. In America, we celebrate taking the reins. Think homesteaders staking claims or entrepreneurs betting it all, and Emma's that spirit. A 13-year-old who turned captivity into control. The mansion's a memory, its 10-foot walls replaced by a clapboard house with a porch swing where she and Lucas watch the sun dip low. Caroline's in a 10-by-10 cell, her name Mud, but Emma's not gloating, she's living. Her coffee shop a testament to a life reclaimed. These lessons, strength within, justice's reach, destiny seized, aren't just Emma's. They're ours, woven into a country that loves a fighter who rises, a wrong righted, a future shaped. She didn't just survive. She taught herself, and us, that no matter how deep the pit, you can climb out with what's inside you. Charleston's her proving ground. Lucas her partner. Every laugh of victory over a past that tried to bury her. The moral isn't loud, it's steady. A quiet truth that'd make any American nod. You're stronger than you know, justice comes, and your life's yours to take back. Emma's no preacher, just a kid who'd rather be chasing fireflies, but her story's a sermon, a 1,590-mile journey from prisoner to free woman, a lesson in resilience, retribution, and redemption that sticks like a hymn on a Sunday morning. Emma's story, as woven through the dramatic tapestry of betrayal, captivity, and triumph, offers profound lessons that resonate deeply, especially for those in their golden years who have weathered life's storms. One key message is the enduring power of inner strength. Emma, a mere 13-year-old, faced unimaginable hardship in the Mitchell mansion, sold by her father and oppressed by cruel captors, yet found a resilience within her that refused to break. For seniors, this serves as a reminder that even when the body weakens or circumstances darken, the spirit can remain a fortress, drawing on a lifetime of quiet courage to face new challenges. Another lesson is the certainty of justice, a comforting truth as Emma brought down Caroline, her tormentor, with evidence and grit, proving that wrongdoers eventually face their reckoning. For those who've seen injustice in their decades, perhaps a slight gone unpunished or a hurt left unresolved, this offers hope that time often balances the scales, even if we must lend it a hand. Finally, Emma's journey teaches that we can reclaim our destiny at any age. After escaping her gilded prison, she built a new life in Charleston, choosing love and purpose over bitterness. For the elderly, This is a call to keep shaping their story, whether through a new hobby, a mended relationship, or a simple act of kindness, proving that it's never too late to start anew. These lessons, forged in a young girl's fight, mirror the wisdom of age. Strength isn't loud, justice isn't instant, and life isn't fixed. It's a canvas we paint until the end. As seniors reflect on their own chapters, Emma's tale whispers that the trials of yesterday can fuel the triumphs of today, urging them to hold fast to their resilience, trust in life's moral arc, and embrace each day as a chance to redefine what comes next, no matter how many years have passed. Thanks for watching Emma's incredible story on Stories TH. We hope her resilience moved you as much as it did us. If you love this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to Stories TH for more tales of strength, and hope see you in next one.